Are we ready? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, welcome everybody to what is the third FH Europe annual meeting. Very exciting, got some amazing speakers, and we're very, very lucky to be in the most beautiful place in Europe, for this year at least, which is of course Paris. And we all know Paris is beautiful and the city of love, and we want to keep loved ones together. So this is what FH Europe is all about, keeping families together and keeping that love moving on instead of creating heartbreak. So I'd like to thank not just everybody, but in particular, the new faces in the room. We have some new people setting up organisations, new people into organisations. This is amazing. We have Aram, who is now setting up an organisation in the Netherlands, and hopefully, through live streaming, we'll have a number of organisations that will be watching the live streaming, so welcome to them too. But in particular, Malta, if you're watching, hello, and welcome to the network. We're a friendly bunch of people, and we all look forward to meeting you next year in Romania, which we have now decided we're actually hosting the meeting at. So a huge thank you. I know Veronique can only stay here for today. And I just wanted to thank Veronique at this point for all the hard work, along with Vincent and, of course, Diana, on putting this meeting on. So I'm sure by the end of the day you'll be thanking them all too, because there are some. It's a fantastic agenda. Before I actually go on, I must ask everybody, if you have a problem being filmed, then, as you know, this is being live streamed, so please make sure you sit at the back and to the side of the room so that you're not caught on camera. And also, I will be taking photographs throughout, so if you don't want to be photographed and be featured on social media and across everything in the world, let me know, okay? Thank you, or indicate to me with something along those lines. So, without further ado, exciting news, Russia is set up. So, Askar is going to come and talk to us about, actually, have I done that wrong? No, Askar, sorry about that. Askar is going to come and talk to us about setting up his organisation and where he's at today and the activities that you have planned. So, Askar, over to you. Thank you very much. Actually, I think that filming has put me off. Can I just ask you to take a seat for a second? Okay. That filming has put me off. What I wanted to start with was actually the film from last year, because this is amazing. And it is on our website. I don't normally go that wrong. This was created by Victor and his team in Budapest. So we will develop similar. Thank you. I think it deserves that. Do you know what makes me so proud? 3 years on. We set up in 2015, and here we are in 18. And I think it's amazing what we've all done. But we've done it as a team, and we'll carry on. And I think, as you can see, we are growing. So we'll be even bigger in Romania. So, Askar, I'd like to hand over to you now. Thank you very much.
Hello again, my name is Askar. Bonjour. I will introduce patient organization, AHLP patient organization in Russia. We were organized this year in August. The name of the organization is Межрегиональная общественная организация содействия повышению качества медицинского обслуживания и защите прав пациентов с гиперхолестеринемией. But I will use English name. The goal of our organization is quite similar, I think, to goals to your patient organizations. There is two main goals. First of all, to inform the general public about the risk of FH diseases and promote the possibility for our patient to have an access to modern medications. Two main directions of our activity. As I said, it was created this year. So this is purely non-profit organization. We cannot earn money. We have representation in Moscow and also in Moscow regions. I am the president of this organization. This is my contacts. Action plan, we have set up an action plan for the end of this year, for the next year. First of all, is to create a website and to give to our patients the possibility to communicate each other, to give them legal information, psychological support, and also just to create a platform for them. The second main direction is to run information campaign via internet, via social networks, via mass media. Campaign like I know my cholesterol, like Mona Lisa, this is best practice already done by our colleagues in Hungary, if I'm not wrong. And also we plan to create videos and present them in polyclinics, because we have big displays in polyclinics, and instead of showing some movies there or cartoons, we would like to use it like a communication channel to the general public, to inform them about risk of hypercholesterolemia. So we also plan some events like test for cholesterol in big private and state organizations, like to attract attention of the public to that, and also organization and participation in conference and the seminars and the round tables. Also patients, school, not only in Moscow, also in regions. So we also aim to facilitate the implementation of medical standards for hyperlipidemia, which is not yet finalized. And we do our best to include the modern medications in the state regional programs. I need to explain a little bit. So you're not reimbursed for medications in Russia. You can get it for free only in hospitals or after heart attack or something like that. But there is some state programs who give you possibility to have these medications for free, like orphan medications, something like that. And we want to include FH into the list of these diseases. So the point we aim to do also is create federal register of FH patients. For the time being, there is many small, how to say, registers, and that they are all separated. It's not on the same basis. And we'd like to unite them into one source of information. And if successful, all that, we will implement all that all over the Russia. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Askar?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, please do.
No, it's interesting to see because you're talking about creating awareness, and I can see that creating awareness in a small country like Sweden. How do you approach that in Russia? A little bit bigger than Sweden.
But you see, the strategy is quite simple. First of all, we consider that we should attack Moscow, including Moscow government, Minister Department on the Health of the city, and if we succeed, so if the experience is successful, we can use all that in other regions. And for us, it will be very big, how to say, advantages. So we say, okay, we did it in Moscow, let's do it in a region. And this is a key point because Moscow is a quite big region, big Moscow. And I know they have money, so we want them to finance all these issues.
I mean, I also have a question about the medication. You said medication is not free in Russia, but which amount are we talking about? I mean, do you have to pay the full amount, or is there the possibility of getting a prescription and getting it cheaper?
Yeah, okay. If we are speaking about, normally it's basically it's not for free. Yeah, but if you're, how to say, chronically ill, handicapé. I don't know the English word for that. Handicapped, yeah. And it's divided into groups. And if it's group number 1, you got it for free. Group number 2 also. And if you have a group number 2, you can get for free PCSK9. If you're group number 3, you have 50% discount. Yeah, but to get it, you need to write tons of letters. And you should get approval from the medical authorities or to have it. And normally, basic approach is if you go to pharmacy, you buy your aspirin, you cannot send it to the Social Security to be reimbursed. This is your problem. You bought it, it's it. Almost in hospitals, you can get it for free, like other medical treatment. And it's like that.
But then the compliance is probably not so good. I mean, if you have to pay the medication yourself, then maybe the people are not taking it then, because when it gets
Yeah, definitely, because I concern this PCSK9, for instance, as far as I knew, it's subventioned by the state, subsidized, yeah, exactly, 50%. And it costs 200, 300 euro per injection. Yeah, but the people who cannot afford it, they don't have it. That's it. It's very simple.
Okay, I think this is really interesting stuff. I think, can we have one more question, which is Anessa?
Yes, I think very great, ambitious, Oscar, and I wish you a lot of luck. And if you will succeed with all this you told, probably you will be the first patient organization in Russia who did something like that. And, but I have a question regarding your collaboration with professional organizations like societies of cardiologists or other specialists in this area. Are you collaborating? Are you planning to collaborate? Because this is also a very good way how to proceed with all these things.
Yeah. Yes, of course we collaborate with medical community, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not professional in this field, I'm a patient with my sad story in the past. And yes, we collaborate with the National Atherosclerosis Society in Russia, this community of cardiologists who support us professionally and give some advice, some support how to deal with that. And that's it.
Thank you very much. I think I completely concur. Ambitious plans, and good luck with that. So I think we should feature you as a bit of a case study, to be honest. So thank you. Okay, so now I'm very proud to introduce Professor Alain Carrier. He is Vice Dean of the Medicine School of Sorbonne University. He's responsible for the Centre of the Chromosomic and Molecular Genetics in La Pitié Hospital in Paris. He's a member of the core group of the ClinGen FH expert panel, and he's scheme organiser of the FH External Quality Assessment. And he's going to talk to us today about how molecular diagnosis may contribute to decipher the phenotypic heterogeneity of hypercholesterolemia. Thank you very much. I'll go and put my teeth in now.
Thank you. Thank you, and I would like to say that I'm very proud and honored to be here, because you represent the reason why every day I go to the lab, and because my professional life is dedicated to identify most of patient FH in France, and we are limited to France at this moment, and to identify patients and making that they were treated and adequately treated. Then my talk will focus on how molecular diagnosis may contribute to decipher the phenotypic heterogeneity of hypercholesterolemia. In fact, it's how genetic testing may explain the variability of the severity of hypercholesterolemia and complications. We'll start with a quite quick reminder of health and metabolism, because it's good, I think, to put the key player on the field. And you can see here the cell surface. It could be an hepatocyte, but also every cells of your body, because all cells of the body need cholesterol. And you have here the main player. It's the LDL receptor. We'll link the LDL particle through a specific binding between the ApoB and the LDL receptor. And then after this, it's we have an endocytosis in the cell, and then after you can retrieve cholesterol and some amino acids and back the LDLR on the cell surface. Then what it moves, it's simple. More you have LDLR on your cell surface, more there is an expression of the LDLR, less you have circulating LDL particles. Then if you have less LDLR receptor on your cell surface, then you have an increase of the LDL number of LDL particles in the blood, and you have an hypercholesterolemia. If you had one other player, and famous at this moment, with PCSK9, it acts as a binder between the LDL particle and the LDL receptor, and then it's a vicious circle, we can say, because it goes, the LDL receptor goes to the degradation, and then when you had PCSK9 in the field, when you have a bad PCSK9, then you have a high LDL expression and you have a low LDL circulating particles. And then if you have a very strong PCSK9, then we have degradation of the LDL receptor, and then you have an increase of the LDL cholesterol. And with this scheme, you have all the things needs to understand how to proceed with hypercholesterolemia. Then we will start with the genetics, and the main player identified through many years, starting with Brunel Goldstein, and after with inheritability with ApoB, and there are IP1, it's a bit far, and PCSK9 just 10 or 20 years ago. Our genetic testing may help to understand this variability and the severity of hypercholesterolemia. I will focus my talk on three specific focus. It's one, genetic way of inheritance of hypercholesterolemia. We have an autosomal dominant pathology, and then there is a semi-dominant trait, and I will try to explain to you, with notably the example of Aram. He talks to us a few minutes ago. And also the fact that we have different genes involved and different type of mutations with different effect. And at the end, because it's the trouble is the cardiovascular risk, what we mean with the cholesterol burden and how to explain it with the genetics. Then we will start with the first trait, with the way of inheritance. And I will use an example. It's a case that I use each time that I'm behind a person who's considered that cholesterol is not a trouble. Here is the example of Anaïs. Anaïs, a little child, 2 years, when her mother brought her to the dermatologist because there were some deposits of cholesterol in different parts. And as you see, it's not a typo, it's the real lipid parameters of Anaïs at 2 years with this very high levels of total cholesterol and also LDL cholesterol. And even if she was very young, there were some deposits on the carotid artery with the plaque here, and also with the coronarography. Here you have a stenosis. The message of hope, because there is a message of hope, it's that after 4 years of LDL apheresis, statins, and diets, there were a quite complete regression of the lesion, because the Anaïs was very young, and we were not at the atherosclerosis step. We were on the deposit step, and then we can have a regression, and I think it's the main thing when as a molecular geneticist, I begin with some disorders where there were no treatment. Here we have a treatment. If we detect, if we identify, we can treat and we can prevent. Then, as you imagine, Anaïs have 2 allele mutated, 2 allele were mutated, and when we have 2 allele mutated, you can have this kind of pedigree. It's that the fact that here she inherits 1 allele mutated from the father and another allele mutated from the other parents. And in this specific case, the colors means that it's not the same gene, and if it's not the same genes, for example, you can have mutation in LDLR and one in ApoB. In this specific case, you are double heterozygotes because it's 2 genes different. In the case here for Anaïs, it was 2 different mutations in the same genes, and here we are speaking about compound heterozygotes. Then Anaïs have 2 very tough mutations in LDLR receptor, and it's why she has so much cholesterol, circulating cholesterol. The other way to have this kind of very high levels is to have the same mutation in the same genes. We speak about true homozygotes. In fact, it's real homozygotes in genetic inheritance. And very frequently, it's 1 common ancestor at the beginning and some consanguinity in the middle. Then it's very frequent with with a very rare disease, which is autosomal recessive, and one of the genes mutated is LDLR-RP1. It's an adaptor protein of the LDLR receptor. And here you have this pedigree where parents were normal cholesterolemic. They will not have high cholesterol. And the child was homozygote phenotype, but it's only when you have an autosomal recessive disorder, the expression of the disorder is only when the two alleles are mutated. At the end of this part, just I would like to say you, okay, the severity of this phenotype is different between the fact that you have two alleles mutated and whatever it's compound heterozygotes, double heterozygotes, or true homozygotes. And the phenotype is less severe when we have only one allele mutated, and it's the very frequent picture. It's the familial autosomal dominant hypercholesterolemia, and where the levels of total cholesterol is between 300 and 600, and LDL-C is between 2 and 500. Then, yes?
Sorry for the interruption, but what is the difference between codominantly inherited and semi-inherited?
In fact, for me, codominant, it was when the two alleles co-expressed in the same phenotype. It's the example, it's a flower with the red and white color. It's codominant. I think here, it's more semi-dominant because semi-dominant is defined by the fact that one allele mutated have one phenotype, and you have a more severe phenotype when you have two alleles. I think it's a genetic discussion between the fact to be codominant or semi-dominant, and in my opinion, we are more in the field of semi-dominant than codominant. Okay, then you can have different phenotype depending on the kind of mutations that we will have there, and then we will move to the second level of heterogeneity and the phenotype. It's which kind of mutation you will have, which kind of gene is mutated. Then the three key players here, and you can see that most frequently you have mutations in the LDLR receptor, and then we will see that we have thousands of mutations there. You have ApoB, very few mutations here, and we'll describe rapidly, and PCSK9, which is of high interest for us as the therapeutic target, but in fact it's very rare in terms of molecular etiology of familial hypercholesterolemia. You recognize the LDL metabolism and all the different things. We can say that we are searching new genes because there is always person without molecular etiology identified, but I think that with these three players, I think we have almost all the things, and it's my opinion, it's much more that we cannot identify the molecular abnormality than it's real new genes with a high percentage of mutations. Then, what kind of mutation and what's the consequences? We'll start with the most simple to understand is the LDLR receptor. Then here it's at the cell surface. Imagine that you have no more LDLR receptor, then you cannot bind with the LDL particle. And if you have a bizarre LDLR receptor with the conformation very strange, then the ligation will be very difficult. Then there is a lot of mutations. I think we are around 2,000 different mutations. Yes. When you look at the ApoB, it's only, thank you. BioBreak. Then, when you speak with about ApoB, it's very specific. It's only the binding which is affected, and if you have no ApoB, then you do not make a LDL particle, and you have very low LDL cholesterol. Then for having high cholesterol with ApoB mutation, it's only very few mutations, and they are on the ligand domain binding to the LDL receptor. Very few mutations, but around 5 to 10% of the LDLR, the hypercholesterolemia phenotype. The last one is PCSK9 with a very strange way to behave. In fact, you have to have a GOF A GOF is a gain of function. You have to get a stronger PCSK9. A stronger PCSK9 will degrade the LDLR receptor, and then you will have less particle uptake in the cell and more particle which are circulating. Then you have the three way to have the phenotype of hypercholesterolemia with these three genes. If we focus on the LDLR, because as you see for ApoB and PCSK9, it's a very specific molecular defect. For LDLR, you have a lot of different mutations, and we can split these mutations in two groups. It's null mutation. It means that at the end, the LDLR receptor is completely not effective. And you can see that there is a large number of ways to disrupt and to do not have one of the allele which express the LDLR at the cell surface. Then it's null mutation, and the phenotype associated with the null mutation is more severe than with the other kind here. Missense means that we will switch one amino acids to another, and then you will have a strange LDLR, but the LDLR is at the cell surface, but it do not look normal, and it behaves variably. It could behave awfully like this kind of mutation, but it could behave quite normally. Then you will have a very variable phenotype with LDLR mutation. At the end, we can switch present the variable phenotype associated with the different mutations, like this, with the LDL-C level from the lower to the higher level. And the less phenotype, it's mostly ApoB defective on the mutation with the defect on the ligation. Then after the mutation defective, the missense mutation of the LDLR, and then the GOF of PCSK9. Then after, you will add the different mutations with the two alleles mutated. Now it's the cholesterol phenotype, but what our interest is the cardiovascular risk associated with this phenotype. And it's why we will discuss about LDL-C levels. We speak about during this last minutes, but also the cholesterol burden. What do we mean about cholesterol burden? It's the cumulative effect of the LDL. The fact that we have high levels of LDL circulating in the blood and with the deposits all lifelong, and it's the main thing that will be the cardiovascular risk associated with the hypercholesterolemia. And here we have a real, very wonderful, it's not wonderful, but it's a great demonstration of this fact. You can see that here with the level, it's the different range of LDL cholesterol in milligram per deciliter. And here is the relative risk of having a cardiovascular risk, and you can see that higher the LDL-C level is, higher is the LDL-C level, higher the risk of the cardiovascular event is. But you can split this study with having or not a mutation in the LDLR, in the ApoB, or whatever. You can see that in this group, notably, in this group, if you do not have a mutation, if you do not have a familial hypercholesterolemia, monogenic hypercholesterolemia, you have less risk than those who have a monogenic disorder. It's most probably due to the cumulative effect of LDL cholesterol and the cholesterol burden. And this range is particularly important because it means we are just in the overlap between what we call polygenic and monogenic. In France, having LDL-C level above 190 milligrams per deciliter corresponds to 10% of the population. 10% of the population is not monogenic. But high number of patients are monogenic in this range also, but we have the overlap, and defining who is of polygenic origin, much more sensible to diets, also with the hypercholesterolemia starting later in the life and explaining a lower cardiovascular risk, and making the difference between this group and this group is very important for care, for adapting treatment and treating the better. Then it's one of the goals when we are molecular geneticists is to try to identify the mutation, but also to try to identify the monogenic regarding polygenic. And in 5 years ago, the Stephen Free team developed a gene score. It's I will go rapidly because it's cooking, it's molecular biology cooking, but just explaining to you that it's 12 SNPs, 12 variants, molecular variants, which are quite frequent in the population. But when we combine these 12 variants in the same person, in the same individual, then you have a higher risk to have LDL-C levels. It's functional variant, and it's quite frequent. And if you combine all these variants, then you have a high risk to have high level of cholesterol. You can see here the old ratio to have LDL-C above 190 milligrams, depending of this score. Then we just calculate the score based on 12 SNPs. And you can see that this has been described initially in UK, but it's also proven in different countries. I think it's almost 10 countries in Europe where this gene score seems to work between polygenic and monogenic. We calculate this gene score in our cohort in France, and very rapidly what we can see, if we calculate this gene score in a population of FH patients, or patients subject to BFH, they have LDL-C above 190 milligram per deciliters, and there is a familial history of hypercholesterolemia. Then we can see that if we split our population between mutated in black and non-mutated in gray, and we split the population regarding the value of the gene score in 4 quartile, never mind, just see one thing. When you have a low gene score and you are not mutated, there are very few. But when you have a high, there is an overrepresentation with the higher gene score of patients without mutation. Then just this bias, this demonstrates that with this gene score, we can try to split the population of between polygenic hair and monogenic with the mutations. If we use the gene score in our population also, we can see that if we split the population with range of LDL cholesterol, you can see that with the lowest range, where there is a great overlap between monogenic and polygenic, we have a large number, around 30% of patients with mild hypercholesterolemia, which have a high gene score and also no mutation. Then these patients are highly, the probability that these patients is polygenic is very high. Then here is the demonstration that we can try to use this polygenic score. We have to improve it, and I think that it's quite complicated for you, and I totally understand that it's quite complicated. My message here is only to say, with molecular genetic, we can try to identify, because you can try to identify the different phenotypes, and here is the polygenic form with a lower LDL-C level and also lower risk, as we saw a few minutes ago, and the cardiovascular risk associated with this kind of difference in the severity of the hypercholesterolemia, and that molecular diagnosis may help to decipher all of this. And just to remind you that we have there are a big revolution in the molecular biology, because we started with this kind of sequencing methods They were very powerful because with this sequencing method using radio labeling and automated with fluorescence, we reach to sequence the whole genome, the famous first draft of the genome at the beginning of the beginning of the third millenary. And now we are able, here it's the first man who have its own genome sequenced. It was a technical improvement, but now with the new technologies, so-called NGS for next generation sequencing, we can sequence your genome within one week. I think it's 2 or 3 days. It's around $1,000 or euros. I don't know what we can do with this, with your genome, but we will discuss this after. But with next generation sequencing, we can make the diagnosis at lower cost and much with a shorter turnaround time. And it's why at the end that we can expect that we can detect early the patients and make an early identification and treatment of the patient, because as Professor Mingman knows these pictures, we can say that when we treat early, we can prevent all the events, because here you have the cholesterol burden of the normal individual person, and you can see here that an FH patient treated at 10 years or at 18 can reach the same cholesterol burden. Then we can treat patients when we identify patients at the good time. And I will finish my talk just showing you this website. It's an e-learning. Most of the document that I show you comes from this e-learning that we have set up with Eric Brucker and also Chris Ballantyne and Dr. Heng at Baylor College, and it's freely available. It was under an educational grant of the EIAs, and then you can go to this website to register, and then you can have this presentation in English. It's much bigger than only what I spoke, but you can have it. Then I can take your question, and thank you.
Yes, you're fantastic. Thank you very much. For what is probably the most complicated subject matter on the planet, I think that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. I certainly understood a lot more, and I've seen an awful lot of genetic presentations, but that was real sort of layman's terms for us, I think. So thank you very much indeed. Any questions for Alain?
It's not easy to ask questions. But what to do in 2 words?
What to do? What to do? It's to identify the person with most probably at the evidence to be an FH patient, then screening by the new technologies and identify the mutation, and then after detect with the family members. It's cascade screening, and it's very efficient, and our friends in the Netherlands made it remarkably, and we have to do it in each country in Europe, and perhaps it would. Sorry?
As early as possible.
As early.
As early, yes. I think yes. The message is yes. Treating early, it's the best way to avoid a lot of complications. But I'm not a clinician.
Thank you.
Hold on a second, I'm going to Vincent next. Sorry.
S'il vous plaît. What do you know? Did we know was the genetic tools about the resistance to treatment, but particularly about the new treatment, PCSK9 inhibitors? Does it give information?
I think that there is, at this moment, too few persons really treated and really resistant to have an evidence that it's we can identify the molecular defect. But it's easy to speculate that abnormal or conformational changes in PCSK9 will be the way to resist to antibodies and to have a less inhibitory effect, and most probably.
One more. Sorry, Andre, I'm going to go to Gabby.
Very quick one. Is genetic testing, is it free in France, or do you get it reimbursed, or how is it done?
Very complicated question, because in fact we are funded by money coming from Ministry of Health. But as it seems that we are spending too much money, the French government have imagined a wonderful way to behave. We will transmit a bill to the prescriptor, and then the prescriptor will transmit a bill to the ministry, and we will transmit to the ministry the declaration that we have made some exams. Then they will correlate the number of bills sent and the number of exams made, and then they will reimburse the prescriptor. Quite easy to understand, yes. It's simple.
Thank you. I think I'm going to take Chair's prerogative for myself to ask a question, and that is, so obviously it's very key to only test the right people. At what point do you test in France? Is it over Dutch lipid score of 8, or?
In fact, to be simple, the criteria are LDL-C above 190 or 190 milligram per deciliter or 200 milligram per deciliter, and a real family component. It's very important. And I think that we can add one other thing. It's what is the age of the index cases? Because when the person arrives to our diagnosis, I think after 50 years old, I think it's 50. It's just the threshold. I think if it's 60, it's much more polygenic origin than at 50. It's one.
Thank you very much. And that was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Alain. Okay, our next speaker needs little or no introduction. He's very close to us all. And we have Professor Albert Wiegman, who is a pediatric consultant at the Academic Medical Centre in the Netherlands, and he has a legendary way of managing children with FH. Albert, thank you.
Thank you for the invitation and the kind introduction. I even had some brand new information because we had a delay with the plane. I had the opportunity to add some things because Gabi, Gunnar, Jules, Professor Carrier already heard this talk a year ago. But it's about FH in children and adolescents gaining decades of life by optimizing detection and treatment. This is our hospital with some daffodils in front of it. Looks like a friendly hospital. And I have no disclosures. We were in London on a monthly basis with 32 specialists, the most of them specialists for adults, only 3 for children, Sam Gidding, Leif Ose. Eric Bruquer was in this group from Paris, France, and we published position papers. And this was the position paper about children and adolescents, and it was published in the European Heart Journal in 2015. For me, the wake-up call came in 1993. I was pediatrician, then pediatric cardiologist, for only 9 months at that time, and a young boy of 14 came to me, and we did a heart catheterization and complete obstruction of all his coronary arteries. And we had to put stents and bypasses in a 14-year-old. The world was shocked later on, or Europe, let's call it Europe, when it was published in 2012 and 2011 that 4 children died in Austria, Switzerland, Germany, and Italy in the age of 3.5, 4, 4.5, and 5. And a few years later, a boy, I think it was a boy, Jules, of 3 died in the UK. So that was a wake-up call for all the pediatricians that homozygous FH is a really dangerous disorder. This one was from Italy and was published in the Lancet. 5-year-old boy treated with cholesterol, LDL 26 millimoles. So that's times 38, almost 1,000 milligrams per deciliter. Here is the aorta, the right coronary artery, complete obstruction of the left. Here should have been the left coronary artery, no coronary. And a stent was replaced. It started on LDL apheresis, and after 3 months, he died of a second myocardial infarction. This case is from Kurt Wiedhelm from Vienna, a child who was discovered with high LDL, put on Atarfa and ezetimibe, and suddenly died at kindergarten at the age of 4 with a 98% occlusion of the left coronary artery. This is the only 2% where all the blood should go through. So nowadays, we now know at the age of 1 or even earlier, 6 months of age, because they have signs that you should treat them with apheresis. We start at the age of 2.5, together with Professor Dunn in Israel, who did it also from that age, and Stefanuti in Rome, who starts really early. And this is the Dali. We now have a Kaneka, and then the blood goes into plasma, and the plasma it goes into cholesterol. The cholesterol is out of the plasma goes back to the blood goes back to the patient, and the patient stays alive. As you also already mentioned, really important to be there as early as possible. So with this child she's now almost 18, at that time we dropped with therapy, medical therapy, so statins, ezetimibe, cholestyramine from 20 to 12, but done on a weekly basis. You should have in between these lines the LDL. And we achieved that at the end of the apheresis, but this was after a holiday. It's almost 9 again. So this is still a big problem. We now add new types of drugs to this. And is heterozygous FH, is that a disease or is that a disorder? The other one was homozygous, that is a disease. I can tell you it's a disaster because you have a 100-fold risk in between age 20 and 40 on a heart attack. And recently it was more precise by Mundell in Heart Journal 2018, in 11 times higher risk between 25 and 40 for men and a 17 times higher risk for women. I will come back to that. So all those people who say, oh, cholesterol, don't bother, look at the homozygous without fishing rods. I tell the children that they have 1 million fishing rods in their liver to collect the fat out of the blood, and the unaffected parent has 2 million fishing rods. But these have nil. So if you have an LDL of 30, your heart attack comes at 3.5. If you have 15, perhaps at 5. If you have 1 million fishing rods, you are in between 3.5 and 13. And at 13, you can have it 35, 3.5, at 50. That's 10 times later. If you have 2 million fishing rods, your LDL is in between 1.7 and 3.4. And in 3.4, if it remains 3.4, you can have a heart attack at the age of 70. It's twice as late as this group. And in this case, with 1.7, it's at 100. And if you have a loss of function of PCSK9, you have 3 million fishing rods. Your LDL is in between 0.4 and 1.6. And your heart attack will come between 105 and 150. And last week I met 2 people who were 107, both male. And I went to a home, but they weren't at a home. They came with a rollator. And they asked for a tablet because they wanted to stay actual at the moment, at the present. So that's a way of becoming 107. So we just discussed in Miami, and we changed the LDLC is not just garbage, LDLC is toxic. HDLC should be as high as possible, but LDLC as low as possible. So therefore, I congratulate the children when they come at an early age, and I promise them that they will become 100 if they will look to the left and the right when they cross the road. Otherwise, it won't happen. But if they do so, because we can bend that line, the cholesterol burden, as you already mentioned wonderfully, at 70 in unaffected happens in 35 in heterozygous FH and at 7 in homozygous FH if you don't treat. And this is the Kera paper. Lifelong elevation of cholesterol levels on a genetic basis imposes substantially greater risk than acquired. So if you have a high cholesterol, above 5, above 195, something like that, and no mutation, you have a 6-fold increased risk on CVD. Whereas if you have a high cholesterol and a mutation, you have a 22-fold higher risk. And this is done rather recently by me, because I'm doing now the outpatient ward for 25 years. And last month, I met a mother who was my eldest patient 25 years ago. She was 17. It goes up to 18. Adam, you were exception that you went away after you're 20, but most go to the pediatrician up to 18. She was 17, and she's now 25 years later, and she's 42, came with her daughter of 12. And I looked at the grandparents. The grandparents who were affected are really interesting because that was before times of treatment of statins. And if you look closely, and I only took of the 3,700 children that were referred to me, only one grandparent, of course, when there are 8 grandchildren from the same grandparent. So I actually had 1,517 grandparents, 1,517 parents, and 1,517 unique children not related. If you look to this line, a normal survival curve goes like this. And at 90, nobody is there, but it stays 100% for a long period, almost 100%. Actually, here it goes down at the age of 23, and at the age of 80, there is hardly anybody anymore. And at 55, half of them had a heart attack. I do the outpatient ward for 25 years. In the first 10 years, there was hardly any treatment. So I said to many parents, till next year, and then in that year, they disappeared, they died. So it went the same flow. And then the medication came, they stopped smoking, and they stayed alive. And that's not only nice for the parents, that's also really nice for the children. And these are the children. I can't put the line further than 42, but 10 years ago, I didn't know if it would drop, but I expected it to continue. Nobody heart attack, nobody cerebrovascular accident of the total group. I only took one, and I always had the first name, furthest in the alphabet. So not only the eldest child or the daughter or the son, but the one with the first name, the furthest in the alphabet. So this is spectacular. All the countries that don't screen remain this one, that level. All the countries that only screen adults go into this and lose just a quarter. And all those countries that screen for children and adults will get this line. So that differs. Here are I exaggerate, I said 3,700, but it's 3,600 children referred in the past almost 30 years. The majority FH, and some had FDB. And here for you, I have an update, 2,161 with molecular proven heterozygous FH, 33 homozygous or compound heterozygous. Thank you for the presentation, that helps. 207 with FDB, but also 509 brothers and sisters with proven non-FH. They know for sure that they are relieved. They can't give it on. Yeah, wow. The good timing. And 168 highly probable but still uncertain. So I challenge Joep de Vesch, or if he doesn't know, he has to contact you, to find out the mutation in this group. And a group in between, and a group really unlikely to have FH. And of course, if I'm specialized as a pediatric cardiologist in dyslipidemia, you also get hypertriglyceridemia, but that's rare. So LPL deficiency, LCA deficiency, this beta lipoprotein, and I have hardly any high cholesterol due to bad habits, diet, obesity. Another center is a referral center for these children. Hypothyroidism is there and nephrotic syndrome is there. So I can give you some physical characteristics. These are for the homozygous. Broadened, really thickened. This is the 3-year-old girl. And orange-like eruptive xanthomas, we call it like that. That's even in the buttock. I don't come into any buttock, but if you see some, you have to examine the whole child. And of course, this is more common in adults, the xanthelasmata and the arcus. This is the photographer, this is the arcus. Oh. And I have 3 rather new cases for you. A 23-year-old who died, and I saw the daughter at the age of 1. And she had a W23X, that's tryptophan, should have been there at the 23rd amino acid. And it stops there. Instead of 840 building blocks, Lego steentjes, you only actually have 22. So no, this is really a nonsense mutation. She had high cholesterol, 7.5, HDL 1.1. This should be in between 1.7 and 3.4, or even below. And then she got a daughter who had an LDL of 16.6, and a son who was heterozygous FH. What happened? Her husband was suffering from FH as well. His mother knew, but she was not checking her children. So he was unaware. And actually, therefore, they both gave on to their daughter, and she is, since the age of 2, on a weekly apheresis. And she's blaming her mother-in-law that she wasn't checking her son. Actually, this is a type where we hope that there is some rest activity and we can give some drugs that we don't only have to do apheresis. The second one, there are 3 cases, was from June 2004 and June 2015. A girl and a boy were referred to my outpatient ward, 17 and 12. And he had a total cholesterol of 3.6, LDL 1.8. Magnificent. He will become 105. She had, in the same diet, a total cholesterol of 9.2, LDL 6.7. Her grandfather died at the age of 52, and an uncle at the age of 28, due to myocardial infarction with autopsy, so for certain. What you actually also see is that they were smoking. This person is still alive and almost 60 without smoking. FH is risk factor 10, smoking risk factor 7, high Lp(a) risk factor 3. So if you multiply 10 times 7 times 3, you have risk factor 210. Therefore, it's so important. I asked the children, 6, 7-year-olds, how many cigarettes do you smoke? they look with big eyes to me and say, nil. And I write in the medical record, nil. And I repeat it on a yearly basis. And of the 3,600, 3,300 weren't smoking, and none of them started. 300 were already smoking, and none of them stopped. But actually, she became pregnant and came with her. We know the mutation was a rather surprising mutation, the G186G. We didn't expect that to be really a severe mutation, but it is. And she came with her husband and daughter, and luckily she was without high cholesterol. But in the meantime, she told us that her brother died at the age of 31. Because he was, at that time, not seen by any specialist, not by a pediatrician, and we asked them to send him to an internist, but he didn't do that. And then it's playing with fire. The third case was also impressive because her sister had twice a CVA at 21 and 33. Uncle, 32, myocardial infarction, died. This one, his son, 26, myocardial infarction without smoking and died. But she was not sending in her children until she herself had her myocardial infarction and 4 bypasses. She was a smoker, and we discovered the 10 kb duplication. And here are the cholesterols of the 7-year-old and 6-year-old. And his cholesterol is 9.5, his cholesterol is 11.1. And now I'm interested who you think is at highest risk, and also why. Who thinks this one is at highest risk? That one. And who thinks this one is at highest risk? There's only 1 or 2 people who think it's at highest risk. Are they at equal risk? No. Again, this one at highest risk? And this one more for that. You were pointing this one as highest risk. Why?
Yeah, I think the older one, because he wasn't treated.
He was?
He wasn't treated for.
Exactly. Exactly. You think of this high cholesterol, but his child is only 6, and he is already 17. We are late. So he is at highest risk. The more because he's already smoking. And the 6-year-old, of course, not. So 17 is, for me, rather late. Because he's 4 years from the CVA, or 9 years from a fatal myocardial infarction. We should actually treat intensively. Why? 1/3 of the parents already got their infarction. 3/4 of the grandparents had their infarction prematurely. Men before 55, women before 65. But also 1/4, no heart attack in the 1st or 2nd degree. These are the milder type mutations, because they actually do have the mutation, but have a milder type. And if I looked to those who got a heart attack, the mean age was 38. If you looked at the moment that they died, the mean age was 41. Mean age. And in the plane, I specified this in 3 groups. The group from June 1989 to June 2002, all divided in 706, 706. At that time, 34% had a heart attack, and 11.8% of that group already died at a young age. In between 2002 and 2009, again 706, and luckily it was always June, there was 23% heart attack and 5% died. In the final group, from 2009 till present, almost present, there was only 16% heart attack, and only 3.3% died. But those who had a heart attack remained 38. So those who weren't discovered will have their heart attack at 38 and will die at the age of 41. Even nowadays, the number goes down, but the intensity, if you are not discovered, remains the same over time. or from 1989 to 2018. This is really new. So in 1994, the Ministry of Health decided for 20 years to do cascade screening to try to find those who are at risk. And they hoped and aimed for these types of pedigrees. Actually, they get these types of pedigrees. But it was of help. And they collected via this screening many, many people who weren't aware of their risk. And why is this so important? Borge Nordeskart, and I was one of the group, but he was the first publisher, was impressed that in Denmark at that time, 2013, only 4% of FH was discovered, whereas in Norway it was 41%. In Belgium, 4%. In USA, not even 1%. At that time in Italy, not even 1%. Spain is runner-up. In 2013, it was 6%. I think it's nowadays 15%. They are improving. I think France is doing the same, but at that time, it was 1%, and now it's 10%. But still 90% to go. And those who thought it was a Dutch disease, please dream on, because the mutations are perhaps 450 million years old. And if you think it's a Dutch disease, we are travelers. We will come with our genes anyhow. But in 1 year time, 5 publications from the Netherlands, from West Australia, from USA, from Copenhagen, and from the UK show that it's in between 1 in 187, I think it was the Danish publication, or 217, and we had 1 in 244. So 4 per 1,000. Whereas, of course, homozygous is 4 per million. But this is 4 per 1,000. So we'll have 70,000 heterozygous FH, of whom 70 homozygous or compound heterozygous. Actually, we now know 54, and perhaps 16 already died. Expected number in the Netherlands, 70,000. We discovered 30,000, and it was stopped, the program, in 2014 after 20 marvelous years. We are embarrassing now that our number dropped dramatically. So Aram, there is a big task for you. 40,000 still unknown. In children, 11,000 in March 2016 screened, half of them positive, half of them negative, plus the index cases makes 7,242, and we are now on 7,500, so only 55%. I feel uncomfortable that there are 45% of the children still undiscovered. And for pediatricians, Duchenne is a no disease, cystic fibrosis, neurofibromatose, Huntington, sickle cell, and this is FH. So the molecular diagnosis, the child is the product of the parents, is beautifully shown with this T-shirt. And if we look closer into these almost 2,200 families, the majority is probably autosomal dominant hypercholesterolemia, FH or FDB, or PCSK9 gain of function. Probably 939 none, and 96 other reasons. If we have a closer look to this as 100%, we lack 29 DNAs. In 14 cases we forgot to ask, and in 15 they refused. Why did they refuse that less? I have referral bias. They all come from all over the Netherlands, so highly motivated. And the second thing is, in 1994, before the Minister of Health started this program, we spoke to the insurance companies. And those who would have positive DNA and would be treated have paid normal prices for their houses or whatever. They have the same price as those who are unaffected. Those who don't want to know and have high cholesterol and a heart attack, they pay double or triple or something. So there is no reluctancy in testing. And that's important, because in many countries they forgot to ask that for the government and the insurance companies. And from the 99%, we still have no mutation in 5.5% of this whole group, but in 93.5% we do have. And we have actually also now 3 children with PCSK9 gain of function, so it's 0.1, with 33 homozygous or compound heterozygous children. But this is not completely honest. I always said 95% is achievable. If I only look at the 896 index cases, we found in 87 a definite molecular proven FH, and in 13% still not. So I think we have to deal with the fact that a certain group isn't easy to discover. This is that the amino acids receptor, we share it with cows, rabbits, hamsters, swines, and sharks. So sharks have FH as well. And here you see, this is the blood stream, and here is the liver cell, the LDL receptor assembled and put into the vessel wall, collect the LDL bulbs, get it into the garage, and then you use the energy for it. But you can have a synthesis defect, transport defect, binding defect, clustering defect, or a recycling defect. Or you can have FDB, and here is the ApoB in an abnormal position, and it can't fit into the receptor. And this is the PCSK9. It sticks on the LDL receptor, and it can't be recycled anymore. The anti-PCSK9 removes the PCSK9 out of the blood, and you can continue to recycle all those receptors. I run rather out of time, but the heterozygous FH has an LDL mean of 5.37. The group is same age, and it is 50-50 distribution because it's not on chromosome X. Some people say it's only running in our females or only running in the males, but it's on chromosome 19. So it's in our group 1,800 boys and 1,800 girls. But you actually see how different this is, and it's not age-related. I don't know if you can see it, but in the non-FH, it's 2.5 from 0 till 20. And in the FH, it's 5.37 from 5 till 20. Here it's higher, and that's referral bias, because the youngest only come with the highest cholesterol. Obesity, 46 children with obesity, they have elevated LDL, but not that high as heterozygous FH. Just above normal. 3.4 is normal, 3.73 is just above. So we have now this type of working on the diagnosis and published lately in current cardiology report. Family history of premature CHD and high LDL-C levels. The International FH Foundation says F plus H is FH. LDL above 5 twice and secondary causes ruled out, highly probable. LDL above 4 twice and premature CHD in a relative or high cholesterol in a parent, highly probable. LDL above 3.5 plus genetic diagnosis, definite FH, and of course all proven mutations, pathogenic mutations in children, definite FH. And this is published in this flow diagram in the European Heart Journal in 2015. A mutation, okay, then you end up in clinical assessment. Just high cholesterol, if it's above this level twice, then also highly probable, and you have to act as if it's proven, molecular proven FH. Yeah, this goes too far. I'm working on a scoring system for children, so the pediatric Dutch lipid score. And here you see that the LDL already at the level of 3 is descriptive. So this is what Walt said. If one child has an LDL-C of above 2.6 and the other sibling with the same BMI has 5.2, you have a 99.8% chance on an LDL receptor. Yeah, this is too much information. Highly LP little a above 500 is a risk. And if it's above 1,000, it's double risk. Prevention, should you see the child as a young adult, yes, you should prevent them from starting smoking. You should give them a diet, but I tell the 3,600 children that they're the only one who are not on the diet. The rest of the Netherlands is far too much food and far fat food. They are the only one who shouldn't use that diet and should eat normal. And they have to move. This is the central station of the capital city of the Netherlands, and you expect a garage for cars, but it's a garage for bikes. And we have a flat country, of course. The ultrasound is of help. We compared those without FH with FH, and without FH, the increase was 0.3 micrometer per year. That's 10 times nothing. And in the affected is what 4.7 micrometers per year, also 10 times nothing, but 15 times as fast. So if you compare the children, blue dots, adults, grandparents, without FH, you reach a 0.8 IMT millimeters at the age of 80. And actually, with FH, without treatment, you reach that already at 40, and you can bend the line from the age of 30, but better from the age of 20. And we think nowadays, start as early as possible, because the line will go directly the same. And we will publish, hopefully, we will send it to the New England Journal. We have now the after 20. We had the after 2, after 5, after 10, and now we go for the after 20 follow-up. This was the after 2. After 2 years, the non-FH, the IMT increased a little. The placebo-controlled group, a lot, increasement, but I was happy that we did, for 2 years, give a group placebo at that time. It was 1997. 4 children had side effects. One had hypothyroidism, one had high CK levels, one had stomach ache for a week admitted to the hospital, and the 4th had rush. And the first 3 were all in the group of placebo. Lucky me, because otherwise I had to recall all the people and said, stop, because you will have hypothyroidism from it. No, nothing to do with cholesterol. But the cholesterol goes in childhood out of the vessel. If it's calcified, it can't come out anymore. But at young age, the atherosclerosis instead of sclerosis can come out of the vessel. 86% on treatment, and in 6-year-olds till 17-year-olds, the non-affected IMT and brothers and sisters, and here the heterozygous FH, and in 2 years' time, it's already going not significantly different anymore. So those who need anti-PCSK9, 4% have statin complaints because they have the SLC01B1 mutation in their DNA, and that makes them vulnerable for statins. 10% benefit not enough from statins, and some have high cholesterol, and we hope for the homozygous that they will benefit. And this is again that important. If you do no screening, you end up with this, and otherwise, if you do only adults, you end up with this. And if you do screening on adults and children, this will be the result. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely fantastic presentation. We have probably got time for, I'm going to stop the questions at the end of the day, basically. So we've got time for a couple of questions, but I'm actually going to demonstrate. So Aaron and I met a UK family in America recently that demonstrated very much the child-parent screening approach. This is a case study coming out of David Ward's study. And there were 3 children, a mum and dad, at the event. And Harrison, the little boy, was the first one to be diagnosed with FH at 18 months. His 2 sisters were then subsequently diagnosed from upward cascade screening. The middle sister, who was, she was amazing young lady, and who just was a very spirited young lady. She had a cholesterol level at the age of 6 of 13 total cholesterol. And her sister had a higher cholesterol, but not as high as that. Subsequently, the mum and the grandmother were then diagnosed with FH. What's great about the fact that these children are now diagnosed, in particular Lucy, is because in the UK, Lucy wouldn't have been picked up or identified at all until at least the age of 40. And I think what you've just demonstrated is she may not have made it.
Exactly.
So that's a classic example. So I say to you, hurry up and publish that paper.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, we will publish this one. We will publish it after 20 of the trial that started in 1997. And what the talk about the talk was recently published in the current cardiology report. So I will give it to you, and you can send it.
That would be very, very useful, especially for our National Screening Committee, who's looking at child-parent screening. So, so question from Vincent first.
Too short. Why did the Dutch government stop the screening procedure?
They thought we were already up to 70%. At that time, it was thought 1 in 500. Actually, we had regions where we had 150% already discovered, so more than 100%. It should have been not 1 in 500, but 1 in 250. They stopped too early.
And the second one is, we've heard here 2 years ago David Wall presenting his paper in the New England paper. What do you think of this kind of screening, which is a bit different than the one that you use?
Whatever you do, all that helps to find the children who are affected, please do. Universal like Poland and Slovenia and I think Slovakia and some others. We will follow that with great interest. It will be a lot of work because 10%, as you mentioned, have high cholesterol. And then you have to find within them who are at greatest risk. In my opinion, even then you need DNA testing, but you can start with just cholesterol. But do start.
I have a question regarding children.
Yeah, you are on.
Hello? Yes, children. So you have about 8% FTB patients. In our country, we have much more. We have more than 50% FTB patients. Switzerland. So we have a different strategy, and we published that with clinical investigation, you cannot catch up the FTB patients when they are under 20 years old. So you miss all the FTP patients probably when you just measure cholesterol. And when you would actually test them for FTP mutation, you would have much more patients, especially children. So that would be really an important strategy also for the Netherlands.
And nowadays with next-gen sequencing, then the FTP is catched easily, as is, for instance, the SLC01B1 mutation that you are oversensitive for statins, as is not yet LP(a). I checked the LP(a) in all the children as well, and those who have NFH and high LP(a), I start even earlier treatment to diminish that risk as well.
Thank you very much, Albert.
I just like to add one thing. You just told me when I'm going home, I'm going to tell my wife that I'm going to be 150 years.
Yeah, 150. And really easily, I tell the children that there's a new type of drug. Since 100 years they invented the drug. If you put it on your teeth, you will have teeth at the age of 70, and the drug is called toothpaste. And they think, okay, I know that drug. And now you have a toothpaste for the inside of your vessels. And if you take a tablet, it brushes your vessels clean. And they put the tablets beside their toothbrusher. And every evening they brush their teeth and they brush their vessels. And they help their parents as well. So they will become older than in the past.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. So we are moving on to the learning part of the programme. Before we do so, I would like to do a photograph of all of us. So we can use it for the network picture on Twitter, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When we've done the photograph, Victor will start the session and show us how to use our mobile devices to make high quality videos. And hopefully there's enough time for him to show us how to edit that as well. I did a video last week and I recorded it 3 times because I couldn't edit it and I don't know how to do it. So that's a very exciting thing. And there will be a guide on the membership area of the website on how to do that too. So can we start with the picture, please?
And afterwards, they would like to have 10 minutes to set up the scene for the...
So I think then in that case, what we'll do the picture, coffee or tea, 10 minutes back. Okay. Yeah. Can we, where would you suggest, Victor? Standing over there? Because if you stand there, the light comes on our head. And it looks like a spotlight.
Outside is much better.
Outside.